Alice! I jolted awake from a nightmare. A strong sense of unease surged in my chest. I took out my phone to call Alice. Tonight, Alice and I had decided to elope together because of our love. But I had called over 20 times without a single response. I anxiously rushed to Alice's house. Suddenly, the special message alert from Alice rang. I quickly picked up my phone to check the message, full of suspicion. Amanda, Alice's mother, was the one who would never agree to let me be with Alice, even if it killed her. But Alice's determined attitude made me waver. I decided to trust Alice's words and went back home, waiting for her next message.
Did the bride's family really ask you to buy these items? I mean, these things aren't suitable for the living. No, sorry. I mean, they're not very lucky.
I laughed and replied to him, "It's nothing. My fiancé just likes this gothic style." Although I explained it to the shopkeeper, I still felt quite confused about these strange wedding items. I wanted to call Alice, but once again she declined my call and only texted me back. For 3 days, I waited. Alice still didn't answer my calls. The messages she sent were very few, and her tone became increasingly indifferent. My patience had run out. I stubbornly kept making video calls to Alice. Finally, the phone connected.
What are you going crazy about? I told you to calmly wait for me to prepare the wedding hall, didn't I?
I'm sorry, but the person I want to see is Alice. If you keep obstructing, I'll come and take her away immediately.
Fine, come here tonight and bring the items I told you to.
Hearing that, I quickly packed up and drove to Alice's house. I stood in front of Alice's house. The house was eerily quiet and cold. As I was about to knock, Amanda opened the door as if she had been waiting for me for a long time.
Come in!
As soon as I stepped in, a foul smell hit my nose, and the cold air enveloped me, making me cough. Amanda turned back, glaring at me, then snatched the wedding items from my hands. Taking advantage of Amanda's distraction, I quietly went up to Alice's room. I entered Alice's room. The curtains around the bed were drawn, swaying without wind, and the candlelight flickered like will-o'-the-wisps. The figure I longed for day and night was lying on the bed. I joyfully approached Alice, but when I touched Alice, a cold sensation, whether from the glove or Alice's hand, struck my mind. I was horrified to realize that Alice had not reacted since I entered the room. Suddenly, a dry, bony hand grabbed my hand. I turned in shock to see Amanda raging madly, screaming and dragging me out of the room.
I've prepared everything. Tonight I will officiate the wedding for you and Alice. The ceremony will take place in the attic.
I calmed down, reassuring myself that Alice was probably just sick. Regaining my composure, I nodded to Amanda and went to prepare for the wedding. The entire wedding hall was pitch black, Amanda's sharp eyes constantly watching me, making me want to flee immediately. I dully performed each wedding ritual under Amanda's guidance, until the final ritual of exchanging rings. Alice's cold hand made me so scared that instead of holding her whole hand, I only held the finger with the wedding ring. Then, that finger broke off. I screamed, throwing Alice's hand away. An overwhelming fear struck me. Alice's head twisted to one side as if her neck vertebrae had broken. The veil fell, revealing not Alice, but a rotting corpse held together by a beautiful silver mesh dress. I wanted to scream, cry, question, or do anything, but I could only open my mouth wide, breathing heavily.
You bastard! Didn't you love my daughter so much? Pick up the ring and continue the wedding.
Are you crazy? Alice is dead. What did you do to her?
Lies! My daughter is not dead. You're just making excuses to stop the wedding. Even if my daughter is dead, she wants to marry you. I will not let her be disappointed.
Amanda had gone mad. I tried to dodge the sharp knife aimed at me, but my whole body stiffened and fell to the ground. But thanks to that fall, I avoided Amanda's knife. The knife stabbed into Alice's body, tearing the silver mesh. Amanda panicked, dropping the knife, frantically trying to mend the silver mesh. I angrily picked up the knife, ready to fight Amanda, but Alice stopped me.
Justin, she's gone mad. Please spare her. Don't let your hands be stained with blood.
Alice, I'm sorry. What horrible thing happened to you?
That night, she discovered that I was planning to run away with you. The two of us had a heated argument, both trying to grab my suitcase. Then I accidentally slipped and fell down the stairs. Mother couldn't accept the truth, so she tried to use dark witchcraft, using a silver net to trap my soul. She chose to forget her crime and accepted our wedding as if nothing had happened.
I cried in pain, regret. If only I had faced Amanda with her, or if I hadn't forced her to choose between me and Amanda, but it was all just too late for regret. Amanda looked at me, crying, calling Alice's name like a child abandoned. But I wasn't kind enough to comfort her. I easily subdued the out-of-control old woman and called the police to handle her. In the end, I fulfilled Alice's wish, carefully burying her body. In front of Alice's grave, the final ritual of our wedding was completed. Looking at the ring on my hand and on the grave, I smiled contentedly. Alice and I had become a married couple forever. I had been searching for her for what felt like a lifetime. Snow White, the princess of the neighboring kingdom. Stories of her beauty spread like wildfire through the lands. But it wasn't until a diplomatic visit to her castle that I saw her for the first time. It was fleeting, just a moment in passing. But in that instant, my heart belonged to her. She was unlike anyone I had ever seen, a vision of purity and grace. I returned to her kingdom soon after, but the Snow White I had seen was no longer at the castle. I heard whispers from the servants, rumors of an evil queen and a terrible curse. They said Snow White had fallen under the spell of the queen's dark magic and had disappeared, her fate uncertain. Dead or alive, no one knew for sure. I had to find her. The thought of her suffering, or worse, gone forever, haunted my every waking moment. It was all I could think about. So I ventured into the deep forest, where I heard she was lying in a strange, enchanted sleep, guarded by the 7 dwarfs who once sheltered her. When I arrived at the clearing, my heart raced. There she was, inside a glass coffin, her body untouched by time or decay. Snow White lay as if merely sleeping, her beauty preserved, unblemished by death. Her skin was still as pale as snow, her lips red like blood, and her hair black as ebony. She was perfect. My heart swelled with purpose. The dwarfs told me that only the kiss of true love could break the curse. I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of destiny pressing down on me. I knelt beside her and lowered my lips to hers, pressing them against the cold softness of her mouth. But the kiss felt wrong. Her lips were as cold as ice, like kissing the surface of a frozen lake. Still, I refused to believe anything could be wrong. This was a fairy tale. I was her prince. My kiss would wake her, and we would live happily ever after. The dwarfs watched in silence, and I waited, But nothing happened. No flutter of eyelashes, no breath of life. She remained still. I couldn't accept it. I was meant to save her. So I took her from the glass coffin, carried her fragile body back to my kingdom, and declared her my bride. No one dared object, though many whispered behind closed doors that something was deeply wrong. They didn't understand. They couldn't feel what I felt. I loved her. She was my Snow White, and nothing would change that. At the palace, I dressed her in the finest gowns, sat her by my side at the grand dining table, and arranged her hair each morning. Her lips, which I painted a deep red, stood out against the paleness of her skin. I made sure she looked as beautiful as ever. But she never moved. She never spoke. Her glassy eyes stared at me, unblinking, unseeing. At night, I would hold her cold body close, whispering to her about the life we would build once the curse finally broke. But as the days passed, I began to feel something strange. A weakness in my body, a sickness creeping under my skin. At first, it was just fatigue, but soon sores began to appear, red, festering wounds. And I wasn't the only one. The servants grew sick too, their skin cracking and bleeding. The palace became a house of rot. Whispers spread through the kingdom. People began to say that Snow White was cursed, that her lifeless body was spreading the plague. They wanted her gone. They feared her, called her a harbinger of disease, and demanded that she be destroyed. But I couldn't let them take her from me. She was my princess, my bride, and I loved her more than anything. Yet, as my body weakened and the sores multiplied, I could no longer stand against the growing mob. One night, they stormed the palace, dragging Snow White's lifeless body from her bed. I screamed at them to stop, but my voice was weak, barely more than a rasp. They took her deep into the forest and built a pyre. I couldn't let my Snow White suffer like that. I pushed myself from the bed, ignoring the pain tearing through my limbs, and ran after them, the world spinning around me. By the time I reached the clearing, flames were already licking at the edges of her gown. The heat was unbearable, but I couldn't stop myself. I rushed into the fire, ignoring the screams of the villagers. Snow White lay in the center of the inferno, her face still calm and beautiful despite the flames consuming her. I reached for her, pulling her into my arms, but as I held her, her body began to disintegrate. Her perfect skin crumbled into ash beneath my fingers, her beautiful face turning to dust. The harder I clutched her, the more she fell apart, until all that was left of my Snow White was a pile of grey, lifeless ash. In the end, all I could do was hold on to the ashes of my beloved, even as the flames consumed me. I woke up at 4 a.m. thirsty. As I shuffled toward the kitchen, I noticed a light spilling out from Ethan's room. It was strange. Ethan was usually a deep sleeper. I paused outside his door, worried by the unusual glow. As I peered inside, I saw my son standing motionless by the window. "Ethan?" I whispered, trying to rouse him. He didn't turn around or notice me. Instead, he continued to stare out into the dark night. Suddenly, he turned to me and said, "It's time." His voice a chill ran down my spine. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was just a dream or a minor disturbance. I walked back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. The strange words echoed in my mind. "It's time." What did that even mean? The following night, I decided to keep a closer watch. As the clock struck 4:13 a.m., Ethan was once again standing by the window, his silhouette as a ghostly figure against the night. I was about to approach him when I heard it, a soft, deliberate knock on the front door. My heart raced as I hurried downstairs. But when I opened the door, there was no one there, just an empty porch in the moonlight. The next morning, I questioned Ethan about the odd occurrences. He looked at me with wide, innocent eyes and claimed no memory of getting up during the night. It was unsettling, but I had to admit that children often have peculiar dreams. Night after night, the routine persisted. At 4:13 a.m., Ethan would stand by the window and the knocking on the door would start. Each time I'd rush to check, only to find nothing but silence. Exhaustion wore me down, and I started dreading 4:13 a.m. One cold night at exactly 4:13 a.m., as I watched from the doorway, Ethan raised his small hand and pressed it against the window. I froze when I saw a hand on the other side, mirroring his. The fingers were long, skeletal, and blackened with decay. The skin was pale and waxy, like someone who had been submerged in water for too long. Panic surged through me. I reached out to pull Ethan away, but he collapsed in convulsions. I scooped him up, cradling him in my arms, as the room filled with a chilling, familiar, distorted voice.
We can be together again.
It was Marie's voice, my wife who had died a year ago. Marie had suffered from a rare autoimmune disorder that made her body decay while she was still alive. I carried Ethan downstairs, my heart pounding with fear and confusion. At the foot of the stairs stood Marie, or what looked like her. Her skin was rotting, her eyes sunken, and she wore the dress we buried her in. Her limbs stretched and twisted in unnatural ways. It was her, yet it wasn't. Her mouth twisted into an eerily grin.
I've come to take our son home.
No! I screamed, clutching Ethan closer. You're not taking him! Desperation clawed at me as I fled back upstairs, Ethan in my arms. I slammed the door shut and hid by the bed, my heart pounding. Ethan, barely able to speak, said in a trembling voice, "Daddy, Mummy always comes at 4:13 and wants us to be a family again." My mind was spinning. I accidentally looked up and saw a photo of 3 of us hugging each other. April 13th, the day Marie died. How had I not realized it before? Fear seeped into my bones as the door exploded open. Marie's twisted form slithered through the bed, her eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light.
Found you!
She hissed, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. In a desperate attempt, I opened the window to climb over to the roof, trying to escape the house. The air was frigid, and a feeling of hopelessness washed over me. "Ethan, we need to go! Now!" I shouted, pulling him close. But as I turned to climb, Ethan's small hand clung to mine. "Daddy, no! I want to be with Mummy!" My heart broke. "Ethan, listen to me! That's not your mother! We need to get out of here!" Ethan's grip tightened, his eyes filled with longing and fear. "Please, Daddy! I miss her!" Before I could argue further, the temperature in the room plummeted. Marie's grotesque figure emerged from the shadows. Her smile twisted into something both horrifying and triumphant.
Ethan! Come to Mommy!
She crooned, her voice full of malice. Ethan's eyes lit up with a mix of fear and longing. He began to move towards Marie, and I felt a pang of despair. "No!" I screamed, pulling Ethan back with all my strength. "Stay with me!" But Ethan broke free from my grasp, running into Marie's cold, outstretched arms. She embraced him, her face contorted in a sickening smile of victory. Marie's limbs wrapped around us, pulling us both into her icy, hard grip. The window, once a beacon of escape, now sealed us in with Marie's chilling embrace. The last thing I remember was Ethan's terrified face turned calm, his eyes locked on me with a mix of love and fear. And now, we're a family again.